a cup of coffee, sit back and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life features stories to inspire and motivate you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. Visit cyacyl.com.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Why is it that even with the best intentions, we don't achieve our goals? Why can't we lose those last 10 pounds, change jobs, or top last year's sales numbers? Today's guest, Beverly Flaxington, says it's because we never learned how to sustain the change effort. Sure, we know how to set goals, but we don't take the time to figure out why we really want the change, why we haven't been able to attain the change, and what's holding us back now. We aim for a positive outcome, but we don't make the necessary plans to actually make it happen. Beverly is here today to teach powerful strategies that can help you get where you want to go. Beverly is the author of 6 books, including her newest, Make Your Shift, the 5 most powerful moves you can make to get where you want to go. She appears extensively in print, radio, and television. Welcome, Beverly. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Beverly, I'm excited about this topic, especially this time of year, because this is when we're all making those New Year's resolutions. This is when we're so gung-ho to make those changes. So I think that you're going to offer us some powerful information today so that we can accomplish our goals.
I hope so, Joan, because I do think that people get very frustrated when they look year on year and they're not getting to where they want to go. So I hope we can help some folks here today make a different shift.
Beverly, how did you develop this program?
Well, it's an interesting story. I have worked for many years with individuals through a hypnotherapy program that I've had for since 1991, as well as on the corporate arena. I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of consulting, so I have a lot of that side of things, and I'm a business person myself. And I always had an approach that I would take with people, but I actually didn't realize that it was a predictable, regular way of doing it. And it was a large client of mine that I have worked with very successfully, who actually asked me to create the program. He said, I'd like to be able to turn around and teach other people to do what you do, but I don't know exactly what to say. So it was with that catalyst that I created the program and then wrote the book so that everyone could have access to this.
Well, you say that your shift model, that the steps of it may seem self-evident. And so often I find that the things we should be doing really are no-brainers. So why do you think we fall short?
Oh, it's a great question. So we are creatures of habit, and we do get into comfortable patterns. And to move ourselves out of those patterns does require sometimes energy that we don't feel that we have, right? We're tired. We're on overload. There's too many other things that we have to do. So one thing is the groove, the pattern that we get into, and getting out of that feels daunting. The second piece, though, I really believe is that we can't quite figure out how to take what we want and break it down in a way so that it's manageable for us. So it seems so big that we keep thinking we'll have this epiphany at some point about how to get there, when what we really need to do is go through these steps and then think about what is one way each day I can move myself in a new direction.
The first part of your program for the S is to specify your desired outcome. And sometimes I think that's the hardest part, to actually find the clarity of what it is we want. You've heard, be careful what you wish for. So how is it that we really know what direction we want our life to take?
It's such a good point, because in so many cases when people are moving, Joan, what they're doing is they're moving away from something. So what we get very good at is establishing what we don't want, and we think, well, if I can just get away from this and move over there, that's where I want to be. So what we have to think about is the why behind what we've established as our goal. I find that people don't question themselves around, why do I care about that? So take an example. I was doing an interview, and the gentleman told me that his desired outcome was he'd always wanted to learn how to do the moonwalk. And he said, I don't think your process can work for me because I don't think I can do the moonwalk. And so tell me the steps I would need to take to learn how to do it. But my first question to him was, well, can we first explore, why do you want to learn how to do the moonwalk? Why is that important to you? And he said, well, I figure if I know how to do that, it'll make me very appealing to girls. I'll be able to meet girls. And I'm a Michael Jackson fan, and I feel like it would be a tribute. So we have an aha there. Aren't there other ways to be able to attract the girls you might want to attract and do a tribute to Michael Jackson? But he had become so fixated on that as his outcome. So we have to push ourselves a little bit and question, what do I care about, number one? What does success look like to me? If I take a minute and vision that I'm where I think I want to go, what does it really look like? What's happening there? What are the components of it? And then why is that important to me?
Do you think this is the hardest part?
I think for many people, this part is very difficult because they have a general sense, but they don't have enough definition and clarity. But when you sit down and you question yourself this way, you start to what I call paint a picture or explain it or embellish it. Or when you do that, oftentimes the clarity will start to come around. What does that really look like? And, sometimes I feel, Joan, we're almost at a disadvantage. We live in a world of options. There's so many things really available to us that sometimes it can be hard to figure out what is that one that I want to focus on right now. So we have to be willing to commit. In order to be successful, I'm going to focus on one thing, knowing that when I get there might be something else I'll want to do next.
Beverly, one of the major things that people do this time of year, this is when everyone decides that as a New Year's resolution, they're going to lose 25 pounds. So making this something that people can actually bring into their lives, because this usually is the area that by the third week in January, we're off the diet. And I hate to use the word diet, but we're off the lifestyle change. So using that as an example, what would someone need to do to figure out how to sustain that healthy eating pattern?
They really have to paint the picture of what does losing weight look like to them. Is it going to be a combination of exercise and eating differently? And if so, what does that exercise look like? You can't just say, I remember years and years and years ago, before I learned a lot of this, and my life was very busy, and I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is go out running at 5 o'clock in the morning because I don't have a lot of time. But, I didn't really look at my desired outcome as, I hate to run, and I really don't like being in the dark by myself running through the streets. This is not a way for me to be able to get in better shape and lose some weight. So we have to be crystal clear. We can't just say we're going to go to the gym. What are you going to do at the gym? Are you going to work with a trainer? Are you just going to go on a certain machine all of the time? What are you going to do about the eating patterns? What kind of commitment are you going to make around the food you'll have in the house, the people you'll go out to dinner with, where it is you're going to go to dinner? You have to really paint the picture of, I want to lose weight, then what does that really look like? When you get there, what is success? And it can't just be the number on the scale. It has to be the lifestyle pieces that go along with it. That's the problem with traditional goal setting. We're looking at a sliver of who we are, not all the pieces.
Beverly, what you just described, is that the second step when you talk about highlighting and categorizing obstacles?
The second step I feel is very important. It's a little bit of those things. But I feel that in a lot of traditional goal-setting, positive thinking, all of this you can do it kind of movement, which is wonderful in some ways, but in other ways it asks us to ignore the fact that we do have obstacles in our life. So for me, the obstacle of going out 5 in the morning, running in the dark, doing something I don't really like to do, I didn't sit down and think about those obstacles. So I just said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. We do need to stop and say, okay, on my way to that desired outcome, what am I likely to run into that's going to make this hard for me? And then I've got to plan around it. And so when I teach people, for example, around weight loss, I'll ask them, so obstacles could be my teenagers have lots of junk in the house. I don't get the time to do the food shopping I want to do. I simply don't have the time for exercise in my day, et cetera, et cetera. We've got to bring all those obstacles to light and then be able to categorize them because they must be taken into account in the planning, and we don't think about them, and then we run into the obstacle, and that's our roadblock.
Beverly, we need to take a break for this week's Good Life Tips. Stay with us for information to help you make the positive life changes that we talk about on this show. Welcome back to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman, and our guest today is Beverly Flaxington, author of the new book, Make your shift the 5 most powerful moves you can make to get where you want to go. Beverly, before break, we were talking about the first 2 steps in your shift model, and that was determining what it is that you actually want and understanding and recognizing your obstacles. Once we do that, what is the next thing that we need to do?
This is another area that I feel is so overlooked, and in fact, the client of mine who said, can you please write this down, said to me, you take into account a piece that I feel most of the time consultants and coaches and everyone I work with don't look at, which is what I call the human factor, Joan. And that has to do with 2 pieces, internal human factor and external. Internal has to do with what are the strengths that I bring to the table? What are my areas where I'm likely to get myself into trouble? External are the stakeholders. I tell a story about, we're talking about the weight loss here. I tell a story about a hypnosis client that I had who was very committed to losing weight and doing all of the right things. And we were having these sessions together, and she was gung-ho. And yet, when she would get on the scale, the weight was going up instead of down. And, we're trying to understand, where is she going awry? Well, come to find out, her husband, she'd not told him that she was coming to see me, that she was embarking on this process. And he sees her trying to take better care of herself, and he's thinking that she's making a plan to leave him, when, in fact, that's not the case at all. So not acknowledging that stakeholder, not bringing him in, not saying, here's my plan, here's the support that I need from you. We have to think about this. When people are career changing, I ask all the time about stakeholders. In the work environment, who are our stakeholders? We've got to note them, take them into account, and they've got to be part of our planning process.
Well, and going along with that, that's when I always tell people to get rid of those negative voices, your own and from someone else, all those voices that give you 1,000,001 reasons why you can't do something, and then those saboteurs that tell you why you can't do something.
I love that. And in fact, I've coined a thing that I ask people to do. I do it myself all the time. When one of those voices visits, we have to recognize it. And once we recognize it, I will actually say, you are not part of my plan. You need to leave now. Because if you almost in a way treat it as something coming to visit you, you're not on my plan. I'm sorry, you've got to leave, because this is something that's going to get me off my track. So we do need to become aware of them, and we've got to manage it. But yes, it's happening internal, it's happening externally, and we just don't take it into account. All of this is really just to, really look at these pieces. This is why we stumble, because these pieces are coming into the picture and we're not thinking about them enough and planning around them.
So once we figure out what it is we want and we've outlined our obstacles, we've gotten rid of all that negativity and the reasons why we can't do something, what do we do then?
We start to get into the fun part. I call this finding the alternatives. It's just really important, Joan, to point out to your listeners that you can't get to your alternatives until you've done these other things we've talked about. The human knee-jerk reaction is, I have a problem, I want to go somewhere, let me put a plan in place. We've got to think through these other pieces, and then we can start to say alternatives. But before we say alternatives, we have to think about our criteria. What's most important to us? So you'll see this, for example, listeners may be thinking, I want a new job in the new year. Well, and I want to be able to X type of job. I want to be able to work in a customer service center. Well, we've got to also take into account criteria. Do you care where it's located? Do you care about commute? Do you care about the hours? Do you care about the people you're working with? What about the culture? Different things matter to different people. So we've got to think about our personal criteria before we can decide what makes the most sense for us. And then you allow yourself a little bit of time to brainstorm. There's probably not one right answer. There could be a few. So brainstorm them, and then out of that, pick the one that best meets your criteria and you think you would best be able to put into practice.
And now at this point, are we ready to take action?
We are ready, and this is another area, gosh, I call this take disciplined action. I have sat in hundreds of meetings throughout my career and with many, many people and been out for a drink with a friend and coffee with a friend where lots of great ideas get surfaced, and we're talking about something and we're committed to it, and the ideas swirl around and nothing gets done. This says I'm going to take what it is that I have for the goal, and I am literally going to break it down. I wanted to write my first book years ago. I was running a full-time consulting business, teaching full-time. I have 3 children. I do a lot of volunteer work. And people said to me, it's not possible. When are you going to write a book, 4 in the morning? So when I came up with my discipline plan, after I went through all these other pieces that we've just gone through, I literally had sometimes on my calendar 20 minutes that I could do something towards it, or 45 minutes, but I had a clear list of what needed to be done. And when we can break it down, that's when we start to feel really good, because we'll start to be able, if it's small and bite-sized, I can at least start to move towards it. When it's not, I can sometimes sit there and be very unclear about what it is I even should do.
Beverly, you're a hypnotherapist. What insight can you offer regarding the power of self-suggestion?
It's huge. We don't realize when I say, you're not part of my plan, these voices, we don't realize these voices that visit us. Some people call it the committee. Some people call it the judge, the jury, and, all of these voices that will come in and will tell us you can't do this, or you've tried that before, or that person's a jerk, or you don't have the same advantages this person has. We are very unaware that most of the time when this is talking to us, it's telling us things that are really pulling us down. And this is, you think about it, stress management, goal setting, confidence building, all of it. So, Joan, if people do nothing more than become aware of the fact that those voices are there and they're talking to them, that would be a huge gain, because once you become aware of them, you can kind of ask them to leave a little bit or uninvite them. But it's very important, the self-talk. But I don't believe in self-talk in the sense of you can do it, and it's combining it with practical action you can take, and the knowledge, the real knowledge that I can take these individual steps toward where I want to go. I can do that each day. There's something I can do.
How much of what we do, say, and believe actually comes from our subconscious?
Well, hypnotherapists would say all of it does. Mm-hmm. I mean, the reality is that we think that we are, moving along and making all of the decisions. And, the truth is those tapes that are in there, those messages that we've been given, if we're not aware of them and if we don't take the time, I talk about things like being an interested observer or playing detective, getting curious about what those tapes are that you play. We really don't realize how much what we do is rote. Our responses to people, the dances we get into in relationships, the fact that we're not making that change because we're just, without thinking about it, opening the refrigerator and taking something that's not good for us. So it's a driver. I mean, we often say the subconscious is the driver, and the conscious mind is actually in the back seat. And we really want to switch that around a little bit so that what the subconscious is doing is helping us and driving us in the right direction.
Beverly, before we run out of time, because I feel that this is something very important, particularly in today's economic climate. So often people are stuck in jobs and they don't understand why they're not getting that promotion, and they don't really see why they're not progressing the way that they believe they should be. And you say that we have career-limiting habits. What are some of these habits?
Well, they are things like negativity in the workplace. There are things like procrastination. There are things like adopting an attitude of it's not my job. Honestly, there's certain places I'm seeing now where people are getting into too much of gossip and backstabbing because they're frustrated, so they'll tend to turn on one another. So all of these things make us feel good in the moment because we feel in some ways I deserve to be able to do it, but they're not helping us, and at some point they'll backfire on us. So all of these kinds of behaviors are actually limiting our ability to get further ahead in where we are or be positive and confident enough to move somewhere new.
And I think that ties back to when you were talking about clarity in what you want. Well, I think you also have to have clarity in your behavior. And instead of always looking externally, maybe first you need to start to look internally and see what it is that you're doing.
And this is one of the hardest things that I find, Joan, is having people realize that self-reflection, that learning about myself, that seeing, it's not to take that opportunity to beat up on yourself. It's to learn so that you have more options.
The book is Make Your Shift, the 5 most powerful moves you can make to get where you want to go by Beverly Flaxington. Beverly, where can our listeners go to get more information?
You can visit my website, which is thehumanbehaviorcoach.com. The book's available at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and you can ask for it in most stores if it's not there. But visit me at humanbehaviorcoach.com, thehumanbehaviorcoach.com.
And as always, you can visit our website, cyacyl.com. While on the site, listen to past shows as podcasts, read the digital magazine, sign up for our mailing list, take part in the book club, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Beverly, in about 30 seconds or less, what is the last thing you would like to leave our listeners with?
I would like to leave them with the thought that we are oftentimes our own worst enemy, but we don't have to fight with ourselves. What we have to do is realize where we're holding ourselves back, make some different decisions to move in a different direction. And every step you take forward, you're moving towards where you want to go.
Beverly, thank you so much for being here. As we're entering 2013, I would say that it is time for all of us to make that shift.
I hope so. It would be a wonderful feeling for everybody.
Thanks again, Beverly.
Thank you, Joan.
This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.